Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Howie. I'm one of the developers here at PTS. Today I have the privilege of walking you guys through our ClearStream RFID product and specifically focusing on our new version 3.0 features. So I'll kind of give you a live demonstration of how everything works, kind of focus on the new stuff within the application. And then as always at the end of the webinar today, if you guys have any questions as I'm going through the stuff here, please feel free to type them away in your question panel at the end of the webinar. Okay. So before I get started, I'd just like to talk a little bit about what ClearStream RFID is before I jump into the new features of 3.0. ClearStream RFID is an application that allows non-programmers to configure fixed RFID readers and hook them up into a pre-existing system. So if you had something like a SQL Server database, Access database, even something like an Excel spreadsheet or text file, and you wanted to add on fixed RFID readers to that system, that's what ClearStream RFID does. It's a mapping tool that allows you to easily hook up these readers to that pre-existing database. In many situations, people may already have some type of mobile RFID application set up, or maybe they're using mobile devices, and they'd like to add on to that system with fixed RFID portals or just fixed RFID readers and kind of map that into the system that they're already using. And that's what ClearStream allows you to do. So with no programming, you can control all of the readers out in your field, out in your environment, and send the tag information that's scanned from those readers back to a pre-existing database table, Excel spreadsheet, or just a simple text file. Okay, so with that, we just released our new ClearStream RFID version 3.0 application. We've added a lot of new features to the application. We've added the first item here is a single reader multi-process architecture. This really just allows you to hook up a single reader and send the tag information that's read by that reader to multiple destinations. So if you had maybe one reader set up around a portal that maybe was scanning both part information as well as maybe an employee badge, you can send the tag information that scans to different database tables or Excel spreadsheets or something like that. Previously in ClearStream, if you were to use it, you were to hook up to a single RFID reader, all of the tag information that was read by that reader would be going to the same destination. So maybe one Excel spreadsheet or one database table. You can now map them to as many as you'd like. We've also added a virtual environment for testing and planning. And what this does, and I'll kind of walk you through this in just a little bit, it allows you to set up a floor plan of what you would like to cover within the virtual environment or for those fixed RFID readers. And you can do it within the ClearStream RFID application so that you can see how the fixed RFID readers will work and how they may send the tag information to a back-end database. So you can kind of get up and running and see how it will work even if you don't have any RFID equipment available. We've also added a public API to ClearStream. A lot of our customers came back to us with ClearStream version 1.0 and 2.0 requesting that they be able to turn on and off the readers not using the ClearStream Management Studio. So maybe a mobile worker that wants to power up or power down different readers throughout their environment, they would want it to do it maybe through a web page or some other third-party application and not have to actually load up the ClearStream management tool. We've added that ability using our new public API, and we actually have a sample of it that's provided with the installer that I will kind of show you how that works in just a little bit here. Some of the other features that we've added that I'll just kind of briefly touch on here, and I'll show you how they're kind of configured within the application. You can now read both the user and the tag ID memory banks of the tags as the tags are being scanned. You can capture tag counts, so every time a tag is scanned, you can have the application automatically increment a count for you. And we also do ASCII conversion of tag data. So a lot of people will encode their tags in some human-readable format that they'd like to convert back to the database. That's now built into ClearStream RFID as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hop out of the PowerPoint here. I would like to mention before I get started in the actual demo that all of the stuff that I show you here today is available as a free trial from our ClearStreamRFID.com website. So if you could just go over to ClearStreamRFID.com, you can click up on the request free trial link there. Just fill out a simple form, and you can download the application and trial everything that I show you here today. Okay. So let me jump over now to ClearStream RFID. I'm going to bring up the Management Studio here and kind of show you how everything works and some of the new features of ClearStream 3.0. Okay, so this here is kind of the home screen of ClearStream RFID, and this is where you're actually configuring a fixed RFID reader and you're hooking up where you'd like to send the tag information as the tags are being scanned. So from this screen here, you can see I have a source on the left and a destination on the right. Now with ClearStream, the source is always a fixed RFID reader. So you pick the RFID option from the source dropdown. On the destination, you're picking where you'd like to send the tags as they're being scanned. So you can pick here if you wanted to send them to a text file. You can also send them to an Excel spreadsheet, or you can go to an ODBC data source, which is where I'm going to actually send them today for the demonstration here. So I'll go ahead and pick ODBC on the right-hand side. Okay, so what that does is it loads the source, which is the fixed RFID reader. It has a destination, and then down below it has the field mappings. The field mappings are how you're marrying up the fields of information that are collected from the fixed RFID reader on the left-hand side to the database table fields on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and actually switch my database. I want to go to a pre-built SQL Server database that I have already set up here. So I'm going to go to RFID SQL Server. I'm just going to go ahead and enter my username and password and log in. And now I'm going to connect to a table that I have available in that SQL Server database. I'm going to go to the RFID tag list. So you can see here now on the left-hand side I have a fixed RFID reader. On the right-hand side I have the destination of where the tags are going. And then down below I have my field mapping. So I'm just going to make sure that the field mappings marry up one-to-one. So I have the EPC memory bank that I'm scanning on the tag is going to my EPC field on the right-hand side. And then you just go kind of one by one, make sure these are married up. I have the tag ID going to the tag ID, user memory bank to user, and so on. So I just have those married up there. Now on the right-hand side here for the destination, one thing I want to do is actually make it so that the tags are updated in the destination as opposed to just always appending. So whenever a reader on the left-hand side scans a tag, I want to update the database with the new information. So if I had multiple readers in my environment, I could see that if it's scanned by reader 1, it's getting updated in the database with reader 1. If it's then again scanned by reader 2, it's updated in the database with reader 2, and I can get a general location of where that tag is in my environment based on that tag being updated in the database. So I'm going to go ahead into the options and just switch this over to the update existing option, and I want to update it based on the EPC values. That means every time that tag is scanned, go ahead and update my database with the most recent information from when that tag was scanned on the left-hand side. Okay, so you can see here right now I have on the left-hand side, I have a fixed RFID reader that I had pre-configured, but I'm going to go ahead and add a new one so you guys can see how you hook up to an existing reader that you may have in your environment. So to do that, what you do is you click the Readers button here, and this loads all of the readers that you have configured in your environment. And maybe as you add readers, you would go ahead and add them here to this configuration so that that reader is now available to you so you can hook it up to a destination. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and add a new one, and I'm going to actually add a Motorola reader. So if when you click Add, you'll see it'll pop up a menu here of what type of reader you'd like to connect with. We support a large number of readers here. If you're not unsure of the reader type, or if it's a reader that's not on this list, you can also try to connect via LLRP, which is kind of a fixed RFID reader protocol, which is common across many different readers. So you can connect and see if you can get that connection to that different hardware that may not be in this list here. But for the demo here today, I'm going to go ahead and pick a Motorola reader. So I'm going to pick that Motorola type. Now the only thing I really need to do here is I can give it a name if I'd like. Now I'm connecting to an FX7500, so I'll go ahead and maybe just give it that name in the list. In the IP address and host name fields here, I want to add the IP address of that fixed reader. So I can go ahead and just type in the IP address or host name, or I can actually click this Find button. And when I click the Find button, it'll actually scan the network looking for any fixed RFID readers, and if it finds them, you can go ahead and select them and add them to the list. So it's a little bit easier way of actually finding a reader if you don't happen to know its host name or the IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and actually enter the IP address that I know here. I'm going to click out. You'll see it connected to that reader, and grab this this reader ID here and populate it in the reader ID field. Okay, so now I added a new fixed RFID reader. It's at this IP address here. And down below now I can configure the different properties of that reader. Maybe when it's scanning for tags, maybe if it's on a timed interval, you want to scan once a day. Maybe you want to hook up some triggers. You can put buttons or light sensors on these readers so that you can power them up. You can control here when that reader is actively scanning for tags. I'm going to, for the demo today, I'm going to leave that on continuous, but that just means when I start this reader, it's always going to be scanning for tags and sending the tag information that's collected to the destination. This GPI trigger is new to ClearStream 3.0 in that you can add multiple triggers. So if you wanted to hook up, say, 2 sensors to a reader, maybe one sensor on the inside of a portal and one sensor on the outside of a portal, based on which one trips that scanner, the reader, it will send that information to your destination. So you can use that to kind of get direction of which sensor was tripped first. So then you can kind of post that with your database so you can see if an item was leaving or entering a room through that portal. So that's new to 3.0. Previously in 2.0 and 1.0, you had one GPI trigger that you could use to power up the reader. Down below here, some of the new features of 3.0, you can now convert the EPC as well as the user memory banks to ASCII. So if you encode the tags with human readable data that you'd like to then decode upon scanning the tag, you can do that here as well. We also added the support for reading all of the memory banks during scan, and that'll allow you to read things like the user memory bank and the tag identifier memory banks, so you can send that information to the destination as well. So if you had something like the last inspection date maybe encoded into the user memory bank, you can grab that date and scan that date from the user memory bank and post that to the destination. You can also configure the antennas on the reader. I'll go ahead and add one antenna that I have hooked up here. You can give the antenna a name. So maybe you can go ahead and name it Portal 1 or something like that, so that you can capture this information along with the tag that's scanned and send that information to your destination on the right-hand side. So anytime now antenna 1 scans a tag, it's going to be recorded with that Portal 1 information. You can also control the power level of the antennas. So that basically the higher you have this, the further the read range generally. So you can kind of play with this power to get to the read range that you'd like for your particular situation. The GPO tab here allows you to power up the output ports on a reader, so you can do things like power up buzzers if something's scanned that's not supposed to. Maybe power up lights when scan activity is happening, so you can kind of display at that portal whether or not tags are being read at that moment. Most commonly we see this used for things like if a tag is going through a portal that's not supposed to, you can power up a buzzer or something like that kind of as a security measure. And the last tab here for device, some of these are new for 3.0. You can control the tag reporting. So based on these settings here, you can actually report a tag when it's first within the field of view of the antenna, and then maybe when it goes outside of the field of view of the antenna. So you're only getting 2 tag reports when that tag is being scanned by the reader. So we have people that have set this up for keeping track of how long a tag is at a location. So you'll get a timestamp of when a tag goes within that field of view of the antenna and then when it goes out. So you only get those 2 events, and you have 2 timestamps of how long that tag was within that being scanned by that reader. Okay. So I'm going to go basically the kind of the default settings here, other than I have it in continuous scan mode, and I added an antenna called Portal 1 here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And on my source side now, I want to use that reader to actively scan for tags. So you can see that new reader that I added to my list is available here. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then just make sure my field mappings, again, are married up one-to-one between the source, which is the fixed RFID reader, to my destination. Okay, so at this point, I have my Motorola FX7500 hooked up to an ODBC SQL Server database table called RFID tag list. So I'm going to go ahead and save my configuration. And I'm going to jump over to the start-stop dialog, and this is where I can actually power up that reader. So if I go ahead, and actually I'll show you the data beforehand. If I go to the data viewer, you can see my RFID tag list right now. This SQL Server table has no tags in it. So it's an empty table that I just hooked up to this reader. So if I go back to the start-stop and I select the FX7500, I'm going to go ahead and hit Start Selected. And this will actually just power up the reader, and now it's going to be continually scanning for tags. And you can see the activity here. I hope you guys can see that kind of moving on your side. But you can see the activity of the reader, and it's actually sending tags actively to that destination. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Stop. That'll power down the reader. If I jump back over to the RFID tag list, you can see here I scanned 86 unique tags into my database, and you can see I marked all of them with portal 1 because they're all scanned by that antenna 1 on my reader. Okay, so that's a kind of a basic setup within ClearStream RFID. You can see I quickly hooked up a fixed RFID reader with one antenna to this destination database table, and I updated the table based on this EPC value. So if I were to later on go ahead and add a second antenna, maybe at portal 2, you would be able to see the movement of that tag between portal 1 and portal 2 as it's scanned by that fixed RFID reader. Okay. So now I'd like to touch on one of the bigger, more exciting new features of ClearStream RFID 3.0, and that's our virtual site survey. Now, what I just set up for you guys with this setup here was using an actual physical fixed RFID reader. So it was a fixed RFID reader that we have hooked up to our network right now, and I was able to go ahead and power it up and start scanning tags. But let's say you guys just download ClearStream RFID 3.0 today, and you don't have any fixed RFID equipment to kind of play with and see how this would work within your environment. Well, within 3.0, you can now configure a virtual environment. And what I'm going to do here is actually open up one that I pre-configured by going to this Tools Virtual Site Survey option. So if I go to Tools Virtual Site Survey, this opens up the virtual environment that I've created for the demo here today. Now you can see I added a bunch of rooms. I added a production floor, a front office, as well as a stock room down here. And there are different areas within my environment. And I've pre-configured these with different kind of tagged items. You can see I have a box here that's in the paint shop. There's one as well on the production floor. In the front office, I have some IT assets. There are these PCs here. In this little closet back here, I have a tool. It's a hammer that's within that location as well. And here's a pallet. So you can kind of add you can kind of add different tagged items to your environment based on what you need. So there's a variety of items that you can put in the environment to match what you're trying to scan. And you can see the other thing that I added were also the fixed RFID readers. So here's a fixed RFID reader in the paint shop. I have a fixed RFID reader in the production floor, as well as one at the front office, and then the last one's over here in the stock room that has antennas hooked up to it for the closets here, as well as the stockroom one. Each one of these readers has antennas that are associated to them. So see, there's two antennas at each one of these portals that are lined up and aimed across the doorway or this portal, so that you can scan the tags as they're going through this entryway here into the front office. If you needed to build out your floor space, you would just go ahead and click the floor space button there, and you can kind of just click and drag. If you wanted maybe this is the showroom in this environment, you can go ahead and add a showroom that's hooked up to the front office or the back office. So there you can see I can add a new area to my environment that maybe is called the showroom. Okay, and you could go ahead and at this point, if you wanted to, add additional tag containers to the showroom, if you wanted to keep track of these that are available in the showroom, and then you can go ahead and start adding RFID readers. So you could add a new reader with some antennas to this environment. Okay. So you can go ahead and aim these around if you needed to scan the front office, the showroom. Okay. So this is kind of how you build out the environment. You add all of your fixed RFID readers. At this point, what you would do is go ahead and actually configure the configuration within ClearStream in just the same way you did with the actual physical environment. So let me show you how that was done. If I go back to my ClearStream application, I have a number of emulated readers. So you saw before when I added the reader to this, I added a Motorola type. If you want to start adding the emulated readers, you would just select emulated from this list here. And then you can go ahead and start configuring the options for each one of the emulated readers. So you can see here, I gave these readers a name. For instance, this one here is the Paint Shop FX9500. I have a number of other readers that are all hooked up through my virtual environment that are all emulated, and they all have the properties of their antennas and different properties all set up and pre-configured. So here you can see I have a Paint Shop reader, and it has two antennas hooked up to it. So let me slide that over. So it has a Paint Shop antenna as well as a production floor antenna. So if I move that over, you can see This is my paint shop RFID reader, and it has two antennas, one called the paint shop antenna and one the production floor antenna. And the idea here is as these tagged items go through the environment, they're being scanned by these antennas and updated in the database. So I'm going to go ahead now and actually start these up for you so you can see that. If I go to my start-stop form, I'm going to go ahead and select all of my emulated readers here and actually just go ahead and hit Start Selected. And what that does is you'll now notice that in the environment, the readers will kind of kick on their lights here as the read range of the antennas goes to green. So now any tagged item that goes inside of this read range is going to be scanned by the antenna and sent to the destination. And the interesting thing there is it's actually hooked up in just the same way an actual physical reader would be hooked up to the environment. So it's sending that tag information to the destination. So if I go back over to the data viewer here and jump over to my sample for the emulated environment, you can see here I have this ClearStream RFID sample, which in this case is a Microsoft Access table, has one tag in it right now, and it's a tag that is in the paint shop, you can see from the antenna name, and it was last scanned today, a little earlier today. So what I'm going to do now is actually take that item and move it to the production floor. So if I take this tagged item, kind of go through like this, walk through that portal into the production floor, and slide back over here. If I refresh my database, you can see now that item was moved into the production floor and it was updated in our databases to the new location. If I jump back to the start-stop, you can see the activity when it's going within those read ranges. So let's say now I take that same item and I want to move it into the front office. So I'm going to go ahead and actually walk through this portal this time into the front office. Now you can see there's new activity in the environment, and if I go back to the database and refresh this database, you can see now that item is in the front office because it was scanned going through that portal. And again, if I take it and move it back, maybe we'll go move it down into the stockroom 1 here. If I go back to the database and refresh that, you can see now that item is located in stockroom 1. If I were to take a different item, let's say maybe this pallet here, move the pallet out of the closet into stockroom 1, there'll be a new item in the database for that pallet, and it's in stockroom 1. So you can see from the virtual environment, you can see how the all the readers would behave within that virtual environment, and you can see it actually attached to a real destination. So if this was an Excel spreadsheet or just the Access database, or maybe it's the back-end database that you're already using in your environment and you want to see how fixed RFID would work, you can go ahead and configure it to hook up to that environment and see how everything works within the virtual setup here. Okay, so let me go ahead and actually stop all of these readers because I'm going to power them up now with our new public API. So let me move the environment over here. Okay, so you can see I have 4 virtual readers hooked up in my setup here. I also have one Motorola FX7500 that I have hooked up in Profile 2 here. Now let's say you hook all of these readers up and you want your workers out in the field to be able to turn these readers on and off as they need them. So maybe you have some kind of remote storage closet that you don't necessarily want to always scan for tags that are in that location because maybe the items aren't moving all that often. But if somebody is going to that location and it's remote and they want to see what's there, maybe you want them to be able to power up the scanner at that time, scan everything at the location, and then just look maybe on a mobile phone or something like that to see what was scanned at the location. Now, you don't necessarily want them coming to this management studio tool here to go ahead and actually pick the reader that they like and hit start. Maybe you have a web page that is already hooked up to your back-end database that maybe shows inventory and things like that, but you also want to hook up to that to give the mobile workers the ability to start scanning for the tags as well, or powering these readers up, and then see what was just scanned. Well, that's where our public API comes into play. You can power up these readers through some third-party tool or web page or something like that, and actually see all of these readers and power them up. So with the ClearStream RFID application, when it's installed, it installs a web app that is available through the Start menu, and I actually have it open here. Bring my browser over. It's available here so that you can see how this works. And basically what you do is you just enter the IP address of where ClearStream's running, as well as the port that it's running on. And then you hit the Connect button. When you hit Connect, it'll load all of the readers that are hooked up to your ClearStream Management Studio. Let me go ahead and actually refresh this. Okay, you can see it just refreshed, and now I see the new FX7500 that I have hooked up to my ClearStream Management Studio. So now again, this is just a web page. This is something that you could actually load on a cell phone if you'd like, a smartphone. But it's loading all of the different readers that we have set up within the environment here. So it's got the production floor reader, it has the paint shop reader, and so on. And from this little interface here, you can start and stop the readers. So I'll show you that. I'll move this over here. Let me try to get everything up on the same screen here. Okay, so here's my virtual environment. Now, right now, all of the readers are off, so you can see that the different readers have the red outline in their antenna read range, and the lights are off on the readers there. If I actually go over to this web API here, or this web app, I can go ahead and power the readers up. So if I hit Start on the production floor, you can see what happened there is it actually powered this reader up through the web page. So that web page actually turned the reader on so that it's powered up for scanning. So you don't have to have a user come back to the management tool. You can see it's running here, that one reader. You don't have to have the user come back to this management studio. You don't have to install this management studio on different PCs. They can just access all of the readers through a web page. Now this interface that we provide is pretty basic. It just allows you to enter where ClearStream's running and then start and stop the readers. But you can build this into your own web app so that if you had something that does show your inventory, you can, within that inventory application that's maybe web-based, you can build in the ability to start scanning for tags and power out the readers through that website. So it's a common request that we have for 2.0 and 3.0 to not have to have the user install the ClearStream Management Studio in order to control when those readers are actively scanning. Okay. So I think that's all I wanted to show you today with ClearStream and the new features. With that, I'd like to jump back over to the PowerPoint. And just before I get to the question and answer period, I would like to mention that we do have a limited number of ClearStream RFID sample kits. Let me bring this back up. So we have a number of ClearStream RFID kits that you can request through your reseller, or if you contact us here at PTS, that basically come in a package that has all of the hardware and the software that you need to get running if you'd like to trial with a fixed RFID environment. So the package comes with actual sample tags. It comes with 2 antennas, I believe, as well as the fixed RFID reader and then the software. So you can actually trial everything and see how it would work with the physical equipment as opposed to the virtual environment. So that might be one step further after testing with the virtual environment. You can see how everything would work with the actual equipment. So I would just like to mention that we do have a limited number of these kits available, so you have to reach out to us to see if they are. But they are good for demoing the application as well as actual RFID equipment. Okay, so here's our contact information. If you do have any questions after the webinar today, or if it's anything that I missed, please feel free to reach out to us. And as always, we encourage you to download and install the trial of ClearStream RFID. So again, that's available on our ClearStreamRFID.com website. If you go there, you can just fill out the form and download the application. You can go ahead and trial everything that I showed you today. The only limitation is the trial will end after a certain period of time, and I think it also shuts off after a certain length of time of being used. But you can see and trial everything that I showed you here today, and we encourage you to do that. And if you have any questions, please definitely reach out to us. So with that, I thank everyone for joining us today. We again looking for your feedback on any future webinars that you'd like to see as far as ClearStream RFID. But I appreciate everyone giving us the time today, and thanks again. I hope to see you again in the future. All right, thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.